I have you now.
They want to mess with my droid. They're going to pay for it.
This is the way.
You may fire when ready.
Blow that piece of junk out of the sky!
The way you're fighting, you wouldn't have lasted long.
Hello there.
The ability to speak does not make you intelligent.
Welcome to another episode of the Star Wars Station Communication Podcast. I'm your host, Carter. We are coming off of a long 16 weeks of non-stop Star Wars TV action. We got the Bad Batch second season, the beginning of January. We got the Mandalorian Season 3, halfway through the Bad Batch. At some points, we were covering two shows at once. We covered the Bad Batch's second season. We had a great time. We talked about that in multiple episodes. We have an episode for every single episode of The Mandalorian where we break it down into details. It was awesome. And this is the first week this year that we're not getting brand new Star Wars on our TV, which is kind of weird. But in 2 days, Jedi Survivor releases. So this episode is going to start the short road to that game. We're going to be doing rapid reactions for the game probably on Sunday or Monday for our patrons to be able to hear what our initial thoughts were on the game. And then we'll have those rapid reactions at the beginning of whenever we're able to do the review. We're not going to announce a date for the review yet because we don't really know when that's going to be. We don't want to promise you guys that we're going to finish the game in a certain amount of time because this game's pretty big. We're going to have to see, and we are going to organically play through it. But we are going to be live streaming the game. If I'm playing, I'm going to be live streaming. We're not sure when we're going to record the review, but we're going to make sure that we're going to stream the game at every possible instant. But right now, to talk about on this podcast, we have a book, came out just a couple months ago, and it is a direct tie-in into the Jedi Survivor video game. We'll talk about what that word tie-in means because I don't know how much this is going to tie in. But the book is Jedi Battle Scars by Sam Maggs. And we love doing book reviews on the podcast, especially in between TV shows, in between movies or whatever. If we're able to sit around and talk about one of our favorite Star Wars books, then it was a good episode. And so we're really excited to talk about this one as well. And we love doing books so much that we're about to get our book club kicked off on our Patreon. There's currently voting on our Patreon Discord server over what book the book club should do. So go check that out at patreon.com/Star Wars Station. We're super excited to get that rolling. We're super excited to read with fellow fans and to just have a discussion about these books. And so you can check that out at the $5 tier on Patreon. I keep saying we, though, so it has to be time for me to introduce to our new listeners my co-host, the Stim Pack Slinger himself, Colin Archer.
Hey, Carter. Man, I've been feeling a tad under the weather, so if I got some cough or some sniffles in there, forgive me on that one. And I might sound a little
General Grievous is a guest star.
Yeah, General Grievous. Yeah, so it's going to be a good show. This book, I really want to be careful with the language. I don't know if I could say I enjoyed it, but it's fun to be back with the characters from the video game and see what they did in the interim, right?
Right. No, you're absolutely right. This book fills in an adventure between the two games. So Fallen Order takes place, I believe, in 15 BBY, and this Survivor is going to take place in 10 BBY. And so this book happens between those events. This book happens, before the Solo movie, before the Obi-Wan Kenobi TV show, and before the events of Jedi Survivor. This book has been reviewed by a lot of folks already. It kind of received some mixed reviews because there might be some problems with the writing or things like that, or the story might not be for everybody. And so we're going to dive into it. There were certainly parts that we enjoyed. There's certainly parts that we're going to highlight as some awesome Star Wars storytelling. And like you said, Colin, it's been great to get back with the crew of the Mantis. We've missed these characters. Any story with them is good. And I do think that this book will enhance your experience playing the game so you kind of understand a couple of the things in the game that are like cosmetic changes to the characters are explained in this book that we're going to dive into. But Overall, Colin, how would you say you think this is going to fit into the Survivor gameplay?
I think you covered the most of it. Like one of the characters has a big turning point physically. We find out how that occurs in this book, and then it's kind of hard to tell. What I'm talking about is overt, right? The other stuff,
right.
They're all split up at the beginning of in the trailers that we've seen, and so there's some. At the end of this book, we find out a little bit why those characters are a bit unhappy with each other. So, there's a lot to it, and there's some valid criticisms I think about some of the way the characters were done and handled, but it's still a fun little adventure when the ink meets the page.
Right. It's a short book also. It's one of the shorter Star Wars adult novels out there, clocking in at just over 270 pages. It was a quick read. I read the book in, I think, 4 days total. And Colin, you listened to it really quickly.
Yeah, I listened to it. It was about 7 hours, and a couple of chapters, they had like some droid something going on. There was a high-pitched tone going on, and this is the first book I've ever experienced that. I suffer from, I say suffer, I'm able to deal with it pretty well, but I have tinnitus. And so that really it gave me some pause listening to this thing. I wanted to skip ahead.
Sure.
It was so bad.
I'm sure it did. I bet it did. And those audiobooks are sometimes tough on the way they include those sounds. But Colin, like you said, at the beginning of the Survivor video game, from what we can glean from the trailers, it seems like the team might not be all together. And that, in the trailers, it was, especially the first one, it was where's Marin, where's Grease. We've seen them. We know they're coming back in the game. Obviously, we already knew that. They're not going to just ditch these characters from the first game. But it seems like the team is in much more dire straits. But at the beginning of Battle Scars in Chapter 1, the crew is all together. They are on an adventure. They are going against the Haxian brood, trying to destroy one of their bases. And the opening, I really enjoyed. Yeah, it does. It does sound really cool. I really enjoyed the way that the team was divided up, the way that they described everyone's skills, as Grease is the getaway giver, Cal is the front man and the leader, Marin is like basic support, and then Seer is doing a lot more technical support. And I really just enjoyed the setup and these first few chapters of moving us through what the Mantis crew has been doing in the 5-year interim.
Right. Well, one of the open ones, Cal he's just in a spacesuit or something like that and is diving down to the planet and going to use the Force to stop him from crashing. That's really neat. Imagine how that looked.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It's the visuals, the author, Sam Maggs, she is pretty good at kind of making you feel like this is a video game book. Like, this doesn't feel like a regular Star Wars novel because it's not. A lot of the combat is described kind of more video game-esque. A lot of the interactions with, especially with we'll use the term NPCs here when referring to stormtroopers or Haxian brood members. It really kind of sets you up for, this is how, Cal is a character in the Star Wars universe. He is a character in a video game, but in the universe, he's a real person. But she kind of puts out the way he thinks and the way he behaves and the way other characters in this book behave closer to a video game. And so I thought that was an interesting literary choice out of the gate anyway.
Right. So I think one of the first major points in the beginning of the book is where they pick up the quote-unquote traitor stormtrooper. And what was this character's name's called? I forget.
Yeah, so there's a stormtrooper who has asked to have the Mantis crew give her safe passage. She takes her helmet off. They reveal that she is not a human, which is abnormal for stormtroopers. And her name is Fret. And so F-R-E-T. She gets on, and there is an immediate connection here between her character and Marin's character. They have a romance going throughout the book, and this initial interaction is between Fret and Marin. Kashiri is her species, and they're purple skinned. They just look like regular people, except they look like, I mean, they're purple chiss, basically. They're just people that are purple. And so they have this interaction, and this is just a kind of love at first sight kind of interaction for them. It burns real hot, real fast, and Marin brings her aboard the Mantis, and everyone else is kind of stunned. Seer also helps her get aboard, but Grease and Cal are like, what's going on? Why do we have a stormtrooper on board? This is ridiculous. You know, we help people, but why would we help one of these people? And this sparks the initial conflict of the whole thing.
Yeah, and sets up the story for what the actual mission is they're going to go accomplish. And it's kind of interesting. They're going to go liberate some MacGuffin-type device that's a shield or something, whatever. But to me, this is the first slight criticism of the book, in a sense of, you know, the video game is focused from the point of view of Cal Kestis and how he interacts with the world and the rest of the crew. And this book shifts from focusing on what Cal Kestis is up to shifting what Marin is up to. And it feels like a third of the book, or 2/3 of it, is just what she wants and what she is intending and what the mission that she cares about. I mean, it does some sort of little conflict of, hey, should we be doing this? You know, and they, I guess they resolve it adequately to go about their business. But it was kind of like, you know, I got into this thinking I was reading a Cal Kestis book, not a Marin book.
Right. I think you're right. I don't think that the problem inherently is that this book is about Marin, because I love Marin as a character. She's awesome. And telling a story from her perspective is cool. But the book is, you know, it's sold as a Jedi Fallen Order, Jedi Survivor tie-in. Those video games are about Cal. I mean, when you read the title Jedi Battle Scars, Cal's front and center on the cover, you really think it's going to be about him. And not to say that the book is not about him, but you're right, it's about a 50-50 between the two characters. I mean, Grease and Seer have a couple chapters each, but for the most part, it's there for about half and half from Cal and Marin's perspectives, and most of the story is about Marin. Like, there's no real growth for Cal throughout the book. Cal is much more like his video game character, where he's got some platitudes to say and some lines to drop and some quips to say, but that he is pretty one-dimensional. And so I would say that is one of the first things that you can talk about on Cal's characterization. He feels a little wooden because he's kind of got this happy-go-lucky, plucky attitude. He's like 1960s Peter Parker Spider-Man. Like, he's like, nothing's going to keep this guy down. Like, he's just, you know, your average hero, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed Luke from A New Hope. And it's like, that isn't the Cal that we meet in Jedi, excuse
Fallen
me.
Order. Yeah, the first thing we see
is not the Cal we meet in Fallen Order.
And interacting with Trilla, and she's being a real jerk to him. And like, he's having to hide who he is. Gets, you know, it's a real harrowing scene. And gosh, there's nothing like that here that has to happen with Cal. I don't know. There's a lot to it. It's just strange for me, you know. And maybe I'm looking at it from the wrong perspective. I'll accept that criticism because maybe that book was intended to be that way. But you know, for the story, what it was, I thought it was written well. I enjoyed reading it in a sense, but it's just like I bought a Coca-Cola and then instead opened it up, it was a Pepsi or something.
Sure. No, I understand. You bite into a baked potato and it tastes like a strawberry. No matter how good that strawberry tastes, you're going to be floored. I think, though, while we're dogging on Cal's characterization some, as kind of our first major critique of the book, I will say that an aspect of Cal's characterization was something that I loved. And it's something that's been going on in the High Republic books for the last couple years. And it describes the way that individual Jedi feel the Force, that every Jedi and the way they feel the Force is different. And so for Some Jedi, it feels like a song that everyone is singing their own note. For some, it feels like a vast ocean. Just different ways of describing what the Force means to them. Well, the characterization of how Cal understands the Force in this book, it expands on the way the video game meditation load screens are. And so when you have Cal meditating to choose new abilities, he's kind of in this black darkness, but it slowly grows around him with the light. And that's how it's described in this book, that it's kind of this vast expanse with the beacons, and that he's kind of moving slowly through it. And that just really fits the way his character felt after Order 66, and just the way I think that Cal's character would understand the Force in general, especially how a Jedi would understand the Force who had been traumatized by Order 66 at such a young age like Cal was. This was a really, really good literary point to make, and she does this throughout the book. Mags continually talks about the way Cal experiences the Force and builds upon that writing that the authors of the High Republic have been doing, talking about the ways to feel the Force.
Yeah. So, you said it. I can't really add to that. So the next thing in the book that these characters go and do is they meet a space billionaire on Hosnian Prime. And that was before.
And this was cool.
Yeah,
this was cool.
Cool
Hosnian Prime's description, the way the city looks, the hanging gardens, the just the way they're interacting with this billionaire's tower and his wealth in Star Wars. They always find interesting ways to demonstrate wealth in Star Wars. And his tower being described as you can't even tell where's glass and where there's no glass, and windows and no windows. And the whole description of Hosnian Prime really got me. I liked it a lot.
Yeah. And just being able to go to some place that's not a Coruscant or some, this is like a high level or high power planet, I guess, most of the time we're going to Tatooine or Navarro or Dantooine or this or that, depending on what property you're looking at. And I guess Tatooine, yeah, it's a high power planet, but it's scummy. This is like a corporatist point of view or something like that. And this he's not with the Empire, and I'd be like some sort of like Elon Musk or Bill Gates or Peter Thiel type character, And so it's cool to see the Empire's the government when it gets right down to it. The rebels are the anti-government, and this guy's a corporatist. It's really cool to see something slightly different in this.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. It is cool to see the slight difference, and it's cool for us to get to. We're introduced to this Karis character who is a bird-like creature, and like you said, this is where we get the need for the MacGuffin. Is Karis wants them to go find the prototype for a shield that is undetectable. It renders you essentially invisible from surveillance. The only way anyone can see you is by literally looking at you with their own two eyes. And so, obviously, the implications for this, for the rebellion that hasn't been formed yet, or for hiding Jedi, or for anyone trying to escape the Empire, is massive. And that's the driving force behind the Mantis crew. Is they're like, this is a big stick it to the Empire score, and with this Karis guy's resources, we can totally turn this around. We could totally start taking the fight to the Empire with a tool like this.
Right, and that's, Cal Kestis, this is where some of the conflict starts to crop up, because you find out, I think this is the first seeds in the book of where a lot of these characters have different motivations for why they're doing what they do. And I think what they arrive to at this early stage in the book is, this is something that can really help everyone out, no matter what your motivations for being here are. And so they head to the prison planet, I guess, is where they send Imperial prisoners. Is that right?
Yes, and they were tipped off before they were sent to the prison planet. Mercana is the name of it, that the Inquisitors are also after this device, that they have a couple days to get after it before the Inquisitors go get it.
Yeah, so
which
Mercana
sparks a question immediately. Why are the Inquisitors being sent after some piece of technology? That sounds like a job for the ISB.
Right. Right. Well, maybe they know Cal Kestis is on the way too.
Well, we do know. Well, we get the explanation later in the book on why, and it makes sense. It's just kind of it is a roundabout way of having an Inquisitor, having Cal face an Inquisitor, and not have to have him be hunted by the Inquisitor. It was just a way for them to meet. But anyway, continue, Colin. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So Mercana, this is where things go. This is the end of Act 2, I guess, where the big explosion is, or the conflict comes to its peak or something like that. So we find out in the prison that it's not a piece of technology or a file in a file folder or something that they're trying to cover. It's a person who has the schematics in their head. And lo and behold, this person is Fret's other lover from a past life who thought that Fret was dead or something like that. And so it's this big whoop-de-doo, and to me it was like and not only that, but immediately after, they were, Cal and Seer and the whole Mantis crew has shepherded, taken on this big risk. We found out in the interim that Fred is she didn't actually leave the Empire. She just took a vacation, and they're expecting me back. And then, so there's that hanging in the air. And then we find out that there's not some, like I said, they were being real nice to Fred to get her in there. And we find out that it's not some, getting the briefcase and liberating it. We're rescuing an individual. It turned out to, like in a video game, what is that? Where you go recover an item mission to a VIP escort mission. And those are awful. No game has ever been able to do those right. And so it's like, so there's all these like different levels of betrayal that Fred has gone deeper and deeper on, and then not only that, the Inquisitors are hunting them, or like, they're outside the prison looking for these guys. And so Fred and her former lover decide, well, we're just going to bail on y'all. Thanks for the help. We think we can handle it on our own. And so it's Cal and Marin in this prison, like, there's blaster bolts, so they can't just exactly like snatch them up and go about their business or whatever. It's like this triple betrayal that's happened right here. And I'm like, why would anybody put up with this? I'd go degrees and I'd be like, deuces, we out.
Right. And if Colin, your description to me feels like it was paced oddly, because it feels like we jumped from the Haxian brood base to Hosnian Prime to Mercana in the span of a couple chapters. And that's actually just the case. It's not your description. It's how quickly we're moving through these places, moving through plot points, that I think is where a lot of people's criticism came for the book, is that you're darted around really quickly, and that might not have been necessary. I mean, it's a 270-page book. It would not have been that big of a deal to lodge 50 more chapters into here, unless they were trying to meet a video game deadline, which is probably the case, is that this book has to be out before this video game is out. And so that was really the answer, but it's just the pacing of the book leaves you with kind of whiplash, because it's, oh, Marin and Fred are in love. Oh, now Fred has another love interest. Oh, the Inquisitors are coming. Oh, we got to go to this third planet, and it's chapter 9. It's just, it's a very quick and very kind of jerking you around feel. But like you said, we're at the prison. The description for the prison really caught me, because I had expected this to be, we just saw Andor, and we just saw what an Imperial prison is like. And at least that Imperial prison is full of mostly innocent people, or people who are being wrongly treated by the Empire, wrongfully incarcerated, yada, yada, yada. This prison, as described by the author, is just full of cutthroats. There's no allusion to the fact that there might be someone good in this prison, or that they're innocents, or that they were wrongfully incarcerated. This prison has got to be full of the worst in the galaxy, because she makes no allusions to anything like Andor, or anything like, oh, maybe the prison is being mismanaged. It is just full of cutthroat murderers, apparently.
And this one person, fresh love interest who was supposed to not even be there, is being hidden away or something like that. It's strange. It's really strange.
But we get some satisfying scenes after this. We get some of my favorite parts right here in the fight scene at the prison. This fight lasts maybe a third of the book. It is a big chunk of the story in dealing with the fifth brother. And so we get to chapter 12, and we get Cal and Marin fighting together, and the way they're taking on not the fifth brother, but the Purge troopers and the Stormtroopers. The way that they're fighting makes me super excited for the tandem combat that we're supposed to see in Survivor.
Yeah,
Mags
really
obviously
hope they pull that
had.
off.
Yes, I think it's going to be. I think they're going to pull it off. Just from the gameplay we've seen, Mags obviously had access to how this was going to work and how it was going to play out while she was writing this book. And so I think that these scenes are intentionally written with a way that is illustrating that combat. And if that's the case, then just combat against mobs with your partner AI is going to be a blast, man, because the way these characters, the creative way that these characters can support each other, if they're able to move that into the game, it's going to be a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah. So what she does is, it seems kind of really video gamey. There's like scores of stormtroopers who have fallen to Marin's magic, and I guess Cal Kestis is hacking them to pieces or touching with their lightsaber many times, and they die, and they get to be overwhelmed. Marin casts a spell or whatever she does, and is able to control all of their corpses and use them to attack all the rest of the foes, so they don't get overwhelmed too bad. So the Inquisitor shows up. It's a really neat mechanic, if you will, and I hope we get to see that. And this whole thing, this fight, it had some silly parts, I think. Because, like, it culminates with Seer and Cal versus the fifth brother, right? And Seer has multiple opportunities to end the fight, and she doesn't.
Well, that's something that we really need to talk about with Seer's character, is that the chapter where she's fighting the fifth brother. So the fifth brother fight, it's kind of, it starts out Marin and Cal. Then Marin's disabled. Seer comes in just at the right moment. They start fighting. Then Seer's disabled. Then Grease comes in just at the right moment. Like, it's just a continuation of they just barely make it to stop the Inquisitor from killing them. And they do this 3 times in a row. Like right back to back to back. And so Seer's chapter, we get a lot of insight into her thoughts and a lot of insight into her battle between light and dark. In Fallen Order, she taps into the dark side to defeat Vader, or just to get away from Vader. And this is something she struggles with throughout the book, which is a delivery in this book that I'm really happy that she struggles with, and something that we're talking about in this book, because this information was presented to us in Fallen Order. And so Seer's struggle needs to be in place in this book, and they're not going to wrap that struggle up in this book, because obviously the sequel to the video game is the place where they would wrap that story up. And so in her head and in her conversations, she sounds really, really cocky. She makes herself sound way more powerful than I think she is. Not that this is like Dragon Ball Z and these characters have power levels, but that Seer is like, it's almost braggadocious the way she's like, we got away from Darth Vader. She at one point says, I am the strongest Jedi in the galaxy. Which to her knowledge is probably the case, but just to, kind of state this in such a large galaxy, and it just doesn't feel like that might be the case. I felt like this could have been communicated in a less cocky way, but I also think her cockiness is important to her character, showing that she's still towing the line between the light and the dark. Like, she is not away. She has not fallen to the dark side, but she is not fully in the light right now. And so her continued tug of war in her mind throughout this fight with the fifth brother, that was important.
Yeah, I think she even says it towards the end of the book. Is like something about how the temptation of the dark side is still there. And
yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
and how she actually tapped into it to help defeat Darth Vader at the end of the Fallen Order. It's real
Yes.
neat to think about, and all these little fight scenes. I think they have valid criticisms, but why do we play these? What's a big draw for these video games? And I'd say number one is to hack stuff to pieces with a lightsaber, and then you can't do that unless you're a Jedi. But so I don't know. I've seen the previews, and I really enjoyed the last game. Is Force pushing stormtroopers around, and in the previews for this game, you pick up a stormtrooper, and he's struggling and keeps on shooting his gun, and you get to shoot other stormtroopers while you're picking him up. So my point is like these Force abilities, and a big draw for Star Wars, is a lot of different things, but Force users using Force things to do cool Force stuff. And it's only at the end of this book do we get to see some of these things, like how they escape from the fifth brother is, I think, Seer with the help of Cal, they build a cage around him, and so they don't have to kill him. And that's noble, but I get that's more like a video game thing, or maybe a light side thing. That's a good discussion to have again too, is because if you got somebody who's a thorn in your side, you need to at least chop their hands off, right? So they're
Right, and
they're not as effective. But just leaving in a cage and run away seems like a video game thing, which is, let's discuss that.
Right. No, I think you're right. It's, we see throughout Star Wars, throughout the prequels, the Clone Wars, where we see a lot of Jedi that they want to immobilize their opponents. They're willing to kill. They don't want to. But if they have to, they will. And so the reason Seer doesn't kill the fifth brother is because they describe, and all of her team, all of the Mantis crew are very upset with her that she doesn't kill the fifth brother, that she is trying to save him, that she's sitting there talking to him, trying to bring him to the light, because everyone who's fallen to the dark side is Trilla to her. It is her failure, and she wants to fix it. And so that was a good characterization of Seer here, but her unwillingness to kill the fifth brother or to immobilize the fifth brother ends up being the problem that drives this story and allows the fifth brother to survive. And so this fight continues to go on. Like I said, well into the back third of the book, Seer is struggling with the fifth brother. He breaks free. He immobilizes her, and he's about to kill Cal when Grease goes and saves them. Fret and her significant other show up at the Mantis, and they are left there while Grease goes to be heroic and save them. Grease gets out in front of the fifth brother, lifts his hands up, and gets his arm cut off. And we learn all of this ex post facto, that Cal was able to immobilize the fifth brother. Like you said, they were able to cage him up. Then we all get back to the Mantis, and this is where we learn Grease has had his arm chopped clean off, and this is a big problem for him. It's not Star Wars until someone gets a limb chopped off, but Grease is extremely upset about this because his limbs are so important to him. Not only, obviously, everyone's limbs are so important to them, but he has 4 arms. It is important to the way he pilots his ship. It's important to the way he lives his life. His ship is designed for 4 arms. Now he has 3. And this is a prevailing problem for him throughout the rest of the book. And we see that in Survivor. We see the payoff there because he has a metal arm. You may not have recognized him because of his new arm.
Yeah, so that Grease losing their arm is such a big deal, like you said. And this really you can tell the characters have this vastly different tone. They weren't exactly defeated. They completed their mission. Marin has to heal. And it's this really awkward scene where Marin has to use all of her abilities, it feels like, to heal her Fret's former significant other. And it's just this real awkward scene. And Seer's mad at everybody, and Grease is just like, he's in the back recovering, and Cal's having to fly the ship. So they go to a moon, and they're just like, all right, I'm going this way, you going this way, we're not talking to each other. And they spend 48 hours just, trying to cool off and have cooler heads prevail. It's a bunch of tough scenes that that I think was actually conveyed well on this moon. I forget
This is my favorite part of the book. Is when they're stuck on this moon and we see the result of this encounter with the fifth brother has divided them. Grease is upset with Seer. Cal is upset with Seer. Seer is upset with herself. Marin is upset with Fret and doesn't know what to do in this situation. And they've all gotten into an argument about why they're doing what they're doing, and it's for all different reasons. And so we see those reasons play out on this moon. This moon kind of sets up. So there was one little bitty side quest that was very important in that Seer on Mercana goes to get this little Jedi MacGuffin to restart the Jedi library and to pass on what the Jedi meant to the rest of the galaxy. Seer sees her role as her thinking she's the last Jedi, not as a savior for the galaxy, but to maintain all of the teachings and the knowledge that the Jedi Order had amassed during its time. And so she goes to the library here. She has this new little MacGuffin, and I really think that it's the setup for the way we see her in the beginning of Survivor, or at least in the Survivor trailers, where she's sitting in basically a small Jedi library. Got the same kind of setup as the Jedi library.
Yeah, it's a really cool scene. We speculated on that in one of our previous podcasts. It looks a lot like the libraries from the prequel movies. It's really cool looking. And,
yes, and it looks like the Jocasta Nu library from the Darth Vader comic. From Darth Vader 2017. Yes.
But the biggest revelation in these chapters is that everybody has their own motivations for why they're here, and they're actually really disparate from what they're trying to accomplish. You know, Cal, he wants to put it to the Empire. Like you said, Seer is wanting to preserve the knowledge of the Jedi Order. Marin she's out for revenge. You know, it's aligned with Cal, but not the same in the sense that she just wants bloodshed. You know, and it's kind of like where Cal wants to do more damage. It sounds the same, but it's not. There's a significant difference there, and that like Marin doesn't have a care, where Cal wants to really accomplish something, right? And what is Grease?
Cal has got a goal.
Motivation?
Well, Grease's motivation is to protect them. Grease's motivation is that he just wants this family. He just wants them to keep their heads low. Seer got him out of the gambling den. He wants to make sure that they don't get caught by the Empire, but they keep sticking their necks out there. So it's making his job way harder than it's supposed to be. And so that's Grease's real rub here. Also on this scene, we see Marin grapple with the fact that Fret has a significant other, grapple with the fact that Fret is not in love with her the same way that she thought she was. And so this is difficult for Marin, but through these scenes, two things happen. One, Marin and Cal, they leave that relationship open. There's writing and dialogue in here that the Marin and Cal relationship, the way that Marin sees Cal might not be as a friend. She doesn't know how Cal sees her. And that was clear from, even though we knew Marin got a love interest in this book, we knew that they were going to have to, at the end of this book, still leave the Cal-Marin relationship open-ended for two reasons. One, because it was not completely unfounded in the first video game, that there was clear tension, romantic tension between the two. And two, that they wouldn't wrap up a major love storyline for these characters in the property that they weren't introduced in. They're going to wrap that story up in a video game. They're going to make sure that there's no questions between Marin and Cal's relationship status, whatever it ends up being. We have no idea. But whatever it ends up being, they want to make sure to answer that kind of question in the video game.
Yeah, and I'm interested to see how that turns out. I mean, I really care more about the gameplay than something like that. But it's still part of what makes a really good story. So what happens next? They go back to Hosnian Prime at this point, right? Once they've all had this slight reconciliation here, I guess you'd say.
Yeah, they don't know where they sit with each other, and we don't know what they're going to do with each other, but they have decided they all want to still be together in some form, and they need to take the Shroud back to Karis on Hosnian Prime. So they head back to Hosnian Prime, And Colin, this is where the book really derails for me. The other problems we've discussed were really not hindering me from enjoying the book. This is where it really gets off the rails because the ending is extremely rushed. Extremely rushed. So we arrive to Karis's and Hosnian Prime, and the characters are displaying senses that, oh, we don't trust this guy. We don't know what his motivations are. We don't really know much about him. When this was pretty much not expressed in the meeting with him beforehand. I really think that, there was trepidation about meeting a stranger, but they all agreed to go on this mission. They didn't really sniff anything bad out. The only person who was really declaring that something weird was afoot was Grease, and that's Grease's thing, is to be wary of everything. So it's not sending up any alarm bells here. And so the ending, Karis turns on them. He says, he got this for himself. Now he's going to be able to sell it at a higher markup. He's just an Imperial conspirator. He was not out for the rebellion, blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, man, this came out of nowhere. I don't know how you felt, Colin, but I just felt like that Karis being a bad guy was like, there was no indication for me that this was going to happen. And so I felt blindsided.
Yeah, you're right. Feeling blindsided is exactly right. You had kind of some hope that he was like some sort of Bail Organa character. Because he exists in that universe. Not everybody's got some evil deed. They're not some mustache twirling or some, revealing their hand at the end to be this bad person like happened here. And so even then, that was the worry from the Nikto character who had the plan in her hand. It's like, I just want this to escape and hide. And it's like, it's just strange. And then that's it. Yeah. They're like, yep. They're like, that's the end of the book.
Well, I don't know, because I think it gets even more confusing. Karis has his guys start rushing in, and then it starts being Haxian Brood guys rushing in. Yeah. And, the alarm bells go off, and it's like, whoa, Karis was working with the Haxian Brood the whole time, and it's just more and more people keep coming out of the elevators in like an endless wave. And this is really, this is video game. This right here is peak video game because the characters are stuck in a room. They have disabled a mini-boss, Karis, and now they are just fighting wave after wave of bad guys that are coming off the elevator. They take care of some, here are more. They take care of some more, here are a little bit stronger bad guys. And there's just like it's no shame, and I do not fault Mags for writing the video game way. That anytime we're saying this is video gamey, I don't want that to come across as a critique because that is, I'm positive that was the goal. That people said, the editors said, whoever it was, Disney, Lucasfilm, whoever in the food chain above her said, this book is going to be, it's like if a video game could be read. That's what they wanted, and that's what they definitely got. And so I'm not trying to complain. I don't think it's the right writing style for a Star Wars story to be delivered, especially in novel form. But I don't want to fault Sam Maggs that I don't think that this was just a writing choice of hers. This was something that was asked. And she delivered. She absolutely delivered if that was what was presented. But they had this endless...
Didn't he die in a silly way somehow? I forget.
Yeah.
He's flying and then he falls.
Yeah,
remember.
Yes, he does. That's exactly what it is. He's like flying around, and he's shooting with this, like, they just really make the guy seem like a total non-threat. And so he is sitting there and he's flying around and he's shooting at him with his like little bitty plinker pistol, and Cal's just like deflecting it here and there. And then he crashes. But the reason he crashes and dies and he's a mini boss is because here comes the real boss, and this is the crazy off the rails part is, they're fighting wave after wave of bad guys, and then elevator ding, and the fifth brother walks out. And it's just like, what is going on, man? Like, Karis is all of a sudden a bad guy. Now we're wave after wave of villains. Oh man, guy from the middle of the book came back, and now he's angry again. And dude, it just, all of this happens in the span of
way fast, machine gun fast,
60 pages. I mean, like, everything we've talked about since they left the moon happens in about 60 pages. And that is just, that was the part that really got me and made this one pretty difficult. It was tough. It was tough to read the end of the book because I just felt like all of this came out of nowhere. The end felt super rushed. The pacing was off the whole time, but the pacing was extremely off at the end. If I were to highlight the end and say something good about it, it's that the Inquisitor fight made me even more excited for the AI gameplay because we kind of saw how that was going to play out with the mobs, and now we see how it's going to play out in a boss fight between Cal and Marin handling the Inquisitor together, striking him from different sides and things like that. So I am excited about that part. I think that they delivered on that a lot.
Yeah. And then after this, they go back to the moon. And is that where it ends? I don't have the book in front of me. Like I said, I listen to the audiobook, so I can't. It's been a minute.
No, I understand.
What happens on this moon?
Do they
part ways a little bit, or
they drop Fret and Irie off on that moon, and they just they're going to move on. The shroud isn't ready to be used. It's like the technology is not where it needs to be, and so they send them off on their way on this moon. And then the team just kind of decides, they are adventuring together. They are going to figure this out. But this book really does plant the seeds for a division among them. So I won't be surprised at all if in Survivor we get there and they're not all together. I think it's kind of clear that could be the case. And so I think they set that up in the end. And that's the last chapter. Colin, one of the things that I thought was a little messed up about the book was that it really left me with a sense of there were no repercussions. Like, this book wasn't necessary. And do not get me wrong, I did not expect this to make any major changes to anybody's characters because obviously they're not going to do that ahead of the video game. There is continuity between the video games. What happens in between does not matter. They want to sell video games. Video games are the third largest market for Star Wars behind movies and TV. And so making sure that people who played Fallen Order can trace every line they need to into Survivor is an important thing for the developers, and I wouldn't want it any other way. But the only repercussion from this book is Grease's arm is gone. And I think that is really it. I mean, we even leave the team together at the end. They have a little bit more trepidation, but the team is together. And one of the biggest issues of the book that's introduced at the very beginning of this book is that Marin's fire has been, she's been losing her fire. It's been flickering ever since she left Dathomir. It's been harder and harder to call on the magic. Well, her love affair with Fret, it fixed this. Her passion's back. She is now has her own internal fire. But that problem was introduced in the book and solved in the book. It wasn't like it was just Marin is again back to square one because at the end of Fallen Order, we had absolutely no reason to think that she had lost her fire in the first place.
Right. And then I guess the only other thing to add to that would be like, the conflict of what this might have added is the conflict of the motivations of what they're supposed to be accomplishing together and how they find out they're not really, like I said, Cal is there to attack the Empire. Marin's there for revenge. Seer's doing what she's doing. Grease is doing what he's doing. And that is a kind of a wedge between all of them.
Yep. No, you're right. It is. And that's, I don't want to say that my gaming experience will not be enhanced having read this book because I genuinely think it will. We spend a lot of time with characters like Marin. She's introduced at the end of Fallen Order. So if you wanted to learn a lot more about her character and kind of get some characterization for that character, then this book is for you. I mean, this book is it. If you want to have a book that feels like the video game, this book is it. Like, there are reasons to read Battle Scars. I don't know if I was just the one that was supposed to read it. I don't know. I'm not that big of a gamer. I don't play very many video games. I pretty much only play Star Wars video games. I'm not super interested in the Night Sisters as a concept. I mean, they're super cool. I don't have anything against the Night Sisters. I love all Star Wars, but it's not number one on my list for Star Wars things that I'm interested in. And so it just might have been that this book wasn't for me. But I definitely don't want to say that it wasn't worth a read. I'm happy I read it because I think it will enhance my experience.
Yeah, you're right. And then, like I said, I can't say I 100% enjoyed this book. I pulled in so many different directions, but it's nice to have some more time with these characters, and to see what happened to Grease's arm, and to see, like I said, Marin, she is a cool character, and see what she's capable of and what she does. It's fun to see that stuff.
Yes, it is. It is fun to see that stuff. So, Colin, that wraps up our Jedi Battle Scars review. We are going to be playing Survivor very soon. I hope that this podcast kind of got you excited. If you didn't read the book, I hope we hit the high points and the important things to know from the book for the game. We are super excited for the game. We can't wait to stream. We can't wait to record our review. We can't wait to record our rapid reactions. I'm pumped.
Yeah. It's downloaded right now. The game is extremely large. I'm at, as of this recording, I'm at 86%, 112 gigabytes of 120. It's insane how big this game is. So I'm hoping there's huge. A lot to it. I'm playing on PC. I hear it's optimized more for console, so I guess we're going to see how that goes. It's not cheap. Any more games are $70. I don't mind paying that much. But if it's not going to function well on my PC, I might have to just come over to your house and play, Carter.
Right. You're welcome to sit down in front of the Xbox anytime you want. I started my download last night a couple hours after you. I got it downloaded in about an hour and a half. So it's ready to go. I can see the loading screen. I mean, I can actually see the opening screen. Opening screen, super cool shot. It's got the menu, and then it's the Jedi Temple. But now it's not the Jedi Temple. It's obviously the Imperial Palace. So it's the Jedi Temple draped in Imperial regalia on Coruscant. So it looks really neat. So that's even the opening menu screen is hyping me for this game.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be really fun to get back into the lightsaber slashing stuff.
It is. My anticipation's through the roof for this game. I mean, I think we're able to play it at 9 p.m. tomorrow night is when it'll go live. And so I'm going to at least get in a couple hours tomorrow evening, but that's all I know that I'll be able to get in this weekend. I've got my mother-in-law in town, and then we have a very exciting project that we're working on Sunday. And so I don't know how much I'll get to play this weekend, but gosh, I am anticipating this game.
Yeah. Me too.
So Colin, that wraps up our Jedi Battle Scars review. We're going to hop into our next segment of our podcast, and that is the segment that is supported by patrons, could not be done without patrons. We want to thank all of our patrons at the Jedi Knight level and above, and this segment is How the Force Works.
That's not how the Force works.
All right, Colin. So today, our How the Force Works question was submitted by our patron, Tristan Franks. We appreciate your patronage, Tristan, and we are really excited. I'm super excited to ask Colin this question because I want to know what his answer is just as bad as you do. Colin, the question is, would you eat an Ewok?
Would I eat an Ewok? Are we talking about in a life or death situation, or like I go over to a Wookiee's house for dinner and there's just one roasting on a spit there?
I don't know. I think you've just got to answer that.
So, as humans, we don't really have any comparison. And it's that funny joke thing. It's a PETA billboard. Where do you draw the line? And, like, would you eat your pet like a dog or something like that? And if you got, the fact is, if you're hungry, yes, a person would eat their dog. And then, there's all kinds of other, like, would you eat another human? You shouldn't, because of stuff called prions, right? You could, if you eat another human, if you've ever heard of mad cow disease, that's why you have to be careful what you feed other animals. You don't feed your pigs bacon. You don't feed your cows beef, because it's a bad thing. You don't cannibalize stuff. But that's not what we're talking about here. An Ewok is markedly another species.
Yeah, as far as the food and safety guidelines of eating an Ewok, I think you're safe. Well,
yeah. No, there's not going to be any sort of but the thing is, you're eating a sentient thing. So I think if you're hungry, I mean, it's obvious. You know, if you and the rest of your human friends are starving and your little Ewok buddies over there, he's going to look pretty delicious. Right?
And they're big.
And they're not.
I mean, it's like
they're not
a whole
put up
pig.
much resistance. They're not going to put up much resistance. So I think in that situation, it's a no-brainer. Obviously, yes.
Yeah.
I think if you get invited to your Wookiee friends, whatever feast that they have, and they've got an Ewok on a spit there, I don't know, man. I might just eat some other hors d'oeuvres, right? Like, you know what? I guess another equivalent would be: what if you went to some place and they had horse, that they were, you know, horse sliders or something, right? You know, I don't know what I would do in that situation. I think I'd kind of want to eat something else.
I would eat a horse. I want to be very clear. I would eat horse. I don't think I wouldn't eat horse. I wouldn't go to a restaurant in the United States and order horse because it's not normal here. But from what I understand, horse is consumed across Europe, across Asia. I pretty much have no qualms about eating a horse.
In America, like think about Civil War type soldiers riding across the prairie to do whatever they're doing. I'm sure they ate tons of horse because they had extras. Some of their buddies might die or go back home, or a mule or whatever. It might have been not something that your first thing that you wanted to eat. But a better thing to do would be a dog. You know, that's a lot harder of a question and has a lot of taboo on it around where we live. And
in the United States in general.
Dog. Yeah. And so, yeah.
I think that in the context of the Star Wars galaxy, you got to think about what Ewoks are. So they're this super primitive species. They're obviously sentient. Then that's the big red flag, right? Is that they can think for themselves. They are on their own. But you've got people like Boba Fett walking around with Wookiee scalps on his shoulder. There is mention of an Ewok fur coat in some Star Wars comic or book that I read somewhere. So in Star Wars, it's not even you shouldn't wear a mink fur coat for real in real life. Like, it's not that kind of thing where you're harming animals that are not sentient. You're harming a sentient being for your fashion. And so in the Star Wars, I would like to say, no, I would not eat an Ewok, is what I would like to say. Basically under any circumstances, except for starving, like you said. But I don't know if that is the case, because how widely accepted is it in the Star Wars universe to eat an Ewok? Well, the Rebels didn't really know what they were. Leia was just friends with Wicket, but imagine she was on Alderaan and she got served some stewed Ewok. She'd never met one of these creatures before. We don't know. Right. Maybe she would have eaten it. I'm just saying. I would like to say I wouldn't. I don't know if I wouldn't though. I might do it. I might do it.
We're both coming at this from a human perspective, even in the context of Star Wars. You know, what if we were Trandoshan? It would be like, how many do you want me to eat in one sitting?
Right? You know? Yeah. That totally not equates it.
This isn't that was on the menu last Thursday. We're having their cousins this on Friday, and then we're hopping over this other planet and have these other guys this day. You know, it's not a thing for these guys, for the Trandoshans or whatever. And I'm sure there's 100 other species who think the exact same way. They're like, "Oh, have you had this Mon Calamari sushi? He was still screaming when we cut him up."
Yeah, that sounds like a trend.
That
sounds like Trandoshan lines. That sounds like if you were writing a story about Trandoshans, that's a line of dialogue there.
And so that's cringe for me to say as a human. As a Trandoshan, it was Tuesday.
Right. It is Tuesday. And the other thing about the Ewoks and the way that it's delivered here, and the way that this question is pointed, is that Ewoks are sentient. They move around, but they are not well known in the galaxy. So in the Clone Wars, people sold Ewok jerky. What my real question is, are there Ewok farms? Like, are there Ewok ranches?
No, surely not.
Or so all of this is wild game sourced. People go to Endor. And how many Ewoks are there then? If you can sell Ewok jerky on a whole nother planet, there's got to be billions of those guys. There's got to be so many of those.
This opens up so many doors because, you know, I was scrolling through Reddit or something and saw some fan fiction or some blurb about how deadly they were, precisely accurate with their bows and arrows, and that's how they're able to defeat the Empire, right? You know, like they could precisely hit all the joints and, you know, we're getting through the eye slits with their bows and arrows and stuff. And so,
yeah,
you know, okay, so that's a bit of context, right? The other bit of context is, you know, one of the most famous bits of short story fiction in our universe is The Most Dangerous Game, where some rich person kidnaps people to hunt him on his own private island, right? And that's a story that's been told over hundreds of thousands of times in TV and all over the place. And so, you know, it's like, again, from a Trandoshan perspective, if you got some word that there's a species out there, it's like, man, they messed these stormtroopers up. How about a challenge over here? You know, if like you're a hunter species, and you know, there's a lot of Star Trek species that do this. They go, the Hirogen, they go and they have like human skulls in their wall and all these other different trophies that they're collecting. And so, you know, just like we collect trophies of elk and deer, and like I've eaten a ton of venison jerky in my life. It's really good. You know, if I'm going through the effort to go to this dangerous forest moon, you know, most biodiversity things, they're diverse. There's deserts and oceans, but if it's a forest moon, for one, you got to find a place to land. For two, you got to find one of these little short creatures. I'm sure they're not easy to hunt. You know, you got to go in your hunting party. One of your buddies is not coming back, right? If I'm going through the effort to hunt one of these guys, by gosh, I'm eating him then, and I'm going to sell his jerky and his pelt and everything else. I feel bad for saying that. I really do.
Well, it's a good thing we don't have to think about it, and it's a good thing we're not starving around any Ewoks anytime soon. But Tristan, we appreciate this question. It was a really good one. Like we want everyone to know, How the Force Works is for patrons. So go check out our Patreon, patreon.com/Star Wars Station. If you want to ask us a question like this, you can ask us anything. I mean, we've had 2 serious lore questions back to back, and then we got this random question. And we're totally willing to answer any kind of questions like this. I think this made for a fun discussion. So that was How the Force Works. And now we've got to get into our segment, the HoloNet News.
You made the HoloNet.
This segment is going to be a little bigger than normal because we've got a lot of exciting news to talk about. And so, Colin, let's just get rolling on the very first news story, and that is Dave Filoni gave an interview about what it's been like writing Ahsoka, and it's pretty exciting. And so we need to get into it. We need to talk about it. He did not confirm the amount of episodes, but we've already heard that there's going to be 8. And he said that on average, these episodes are going to be longer than the Mandalorian episodes on average. And so we're getting some good content. And then the final part of his interview that I want to mention before I get your take on it is that Dave Filoni recommended what episodes of Rebels to watch to get prepared for Ahsoka. And he said beginning with the Jedi Knight episode until the end is definitely where people need to start. Not that it's required watching for Ahsoka. You're going to understand Ahsoka if you don't go watch Rebels. But Filoni himself has said this is the place to watch if you really want to have a handle on what's going on in Ahsoka. It's beginning with Jedi Knight.
Yeah. Goodness gracious. There's so much you could read into this, and then, or it could be just a little whoop-de-doo, I guess. But I'm really glad that, see, that the Ahsoka character is just so broad, and I would tell people, if it were me in his shoes, I would tell him that, hey, you got to go watch this, just so you can get the whole experience. And then the Tales of the Jedi, see that stuff. maybe there's different tiers that you can get into, but what I worry about is, Andor is such a phenomenal show, and we loved it so much, and it's such high quality on so many different levels, and but if you go out and poll just your random friends who like or care about Star Wars, Andor's just not high on their list. I got some friends who they've only barely finished The Mandalorian, and whereas for us, obviously watched it as soon as we could. And so I'm wondering if, they should be like a better salesman almost for this Ahsoka show, so that to get more people to watch it. I don't want it to go by the wayside, and not that Andor did, but it didn't have the same viewership that some of these other shows did, and Ahsoka deserves it, if not more than any of them.
Sure. No, I mean, you're right. I mean, it is just a fact that Andor, it had massive critical acclaim, but it did not do the numbers compared to the other shows. And so you're absolutely right. And I think, Ahsoka really has the potential to, and probably will do this. It's probably going to deliver in a much bigger way than any property we've seen so far. Maybe it's probably got about the same expectations that Kenobi had around it, but I'm more confident in the project. And so these comments by Filoni are enlightening. They are shedding a little bit of light. What I thought that was the most interesting from the whole interview was the episodes of Rebels he said to watch, because he said that watching those little end bits of Rebels is really going to expand your experience on watching Ahsoka. And so I hope a lot of people will take his words to heed and will at least go watch those, if not the whole thing. I mean, really, and Dave Filoni says this in his quote too. He's like, just go watch the whole thing. Like, it's you have to watch these episodes to get a perfect grasp on what's going on. But if you didn't watch, because come on, I mean, in these episodes, that's where Ahsoka gets saved from the world between worlds and from the battle on Malachor. That why, like, no one is going to know what she was doing or what that battle was like unless they go back and watch older stuff. And so that's my hope, is that when they see Ahsoka get rescued from Vader on the Battle of Malachor, that, oh, this is actually just a way for Dave to get everybody to watch Rebels, because now they got to see what happens on Malachor. That's my hope, at least.
Yeah, Colin, and then, of course, Thrawn, he's going to bring in a bunch of stuff, too. So.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, there's all those end bits are very important, because it just sets up where we're going. I mean, it sets up where the Ahsoka show is going to pick off from here. Because like people are saying, there's a lot like Rebels Season 5. And so that's probably what we're going to see a lot of. Colin, for our next story, this was one that we just have to talk about. There's been a lot of buzz online about this story, and so we need to talk about it. And once again, I just think that my opinion, what I expect your opinion to be, is somewhere in the middle between just two sides that are screaming at each other about this. Recently, Tamara Morrison gave some comments at a convention, and he was pretty dissatisfied with The Mandalorian Season 3. One of the quotes was, "I was supposed to be in The Mandalorian Season 3, but nobody rang me. I was waiting for the phone call in New Zealand, waiting and wanting to give up." And then, when asked about The Mandalorian's appearance in his show, he said, "Well, that Mando guy stole a few chapters of my book. I'm sure this guy is ruining my show, but I couldn't say anything. I'm not the writer, so I have to bear it, I guess." Those are both quotes from Tamara Morrison, so it sounds like he's pretty upset with the reception that the Book of Boba Fett had, with the direction that the show went, and with the fact that, he thought he at least was going to get to play a supporting role in The Mandalorian, and that just isn't the case.
Yeah, on one hand, I can understand his frustration, because he kind of was, Boba Fett's supposed to be this cutthroat bounty hunter, and he was this compassionate leader at the end of the show. And
right.
That's not, I mean, that's not anything of his doing. He's doing what he's told, but that's not the Boba Fett I know. I mean, I enjoyed it. Don't get me wrong. I really liked it a lot. But I missed the cutthroat Boba Fett, But on the other hand, it seems kind of classless to make these comments like this to somebody you want to be employed by. And that might be kind of harsh to say, but if I were in his shoes, it's tough. But I guess if he's not expecting to work anymore, then he's in
a really tough position because he is he's a talented actor and he's an artist. I mean, obviously his acting is his art, and so he wants to be invested in his art. And I don't know what his problems were with the Book of Boba Fett. Specifically, I know in past interviews it sounded like he wants Boba Fett to get back to, you said, like more to his badass roots. And they had a big problem with Mando taking up such a giant chunk of his show, and there's been so much buzz in the background that this was mandated by Disney or the studio, or that this was a Favreau decision, and we don't know. But we know that this was probably not the original plan to reunite Grogu and Mando so soon in that show, and for it to take up so much of that show. And so Temuera Morrison is voicing these issues, and there is credence to them. Temuera Morrison has been a part of Star Wars since the prequels. He is millions of characters. He is millions of people. He can play the clones. He can play Boba Fett. He can play Jango. And so having him included in Star Wars is really important. So he might have a little bit more bargaining power than somebody else, than some other side character would, because of who he is and the characters that he's played, and he knows that he is an important legacy character in Boba Fett, and that any opportunity to play the clones in live action, I mean, if it's not Tim Morrison's voice, we're going to notice if it's the clones in live action. And so he's got a little bit of bargaining power there. I hate to see comments like this made, like you said, because I want him to show up in more projects, and making comments like this is not the way for him to show up in more projects. I don't want them to lose out on Boba Fett, but a lot of this is also got to be related to the budget cuts that Bob Iger's come in and done, and that maybe they just didn't have the capability to pay for Temuera to be in The Mandalorian Season 3. And, there was no buzz at Celebration about a second season of the Book of Boba Fett, and so it really does seem like Temuera Morrison might be sidelined for a few years, if not kind of put on the shelf for a while. And I don't know how that's going to sit with him. I don't know if he would be willing to come back or what he wants to do. I don't know his relationships behind the scenes. It's just comments like this are upsetting, and I don't want to see him go. I want Temuera Morrison back. I want Lucasfilm to do everything in their power to bring him back within reason, within story reason, within monetary reason. The last thing I want is for somebody to have a bad experience being in the Star Wars universe. But sometimes that just happens. And so I hope that this isn't a permanent chip on Temuera Morrison's shoulder. I hope he can move beyond that, and that they have more stories planned for Boba Fett or Jango Fett or him playing the clones, and that we don't miss out on this great actor.
And especially if the next potential thing that you could be working on is a Mandoverse tie-together movie where you would have potential to play a major role. I mean, that's not something I would want to miss out on. Yep.
You're right. I agree. So the next piece of news is actually really, really exciting. It's also casting news. And this is a rumor. We gotta make it clear that this is a rumor. This has not been confirmed, but it's a rumor from a credible source. This person has gotten some things right before, and this has caused a lot of buzz on the internet. And so, with any hope it is right, or with any hope this being mentioned is going to spur the actor to do this. But on the Hot Mic podcast, Jeff Snyder confirmed that he heard a rumor, confirmed he heard a rumor. So take that with a grain of salt. But confirmed that he had a rumor. John Boyega is in talks to come back for the new Rey Skywalker film 15 years after The Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, we speculated on this. I think in some of our past discussions. I hope this is true. Obviously I hope there's some Force stuff going on. He's not just another character there trying to find Ray or something. I hope he has a prominent role. What I mean literally by that is his face is very large on the poster. He was a great character that was dealt bad writing hand. I think they need that crew in whatever movie they're going to make, and it was Finn and Ray who made up a good part of that crew, right? And I, if it's either John Boyega or nothing for Finn's character.
Yeah. No, I don't think we could recast Finn's character. I mean, not in John Boyega's young lifetime. That's not, that wouldn't be appropriate. With that actor out there, if he's really that unwilling to come back, they've got to just have a reason that Finn's not on screen. Like, they've just got to be able to write it away. And it couldn't be that hard. But I'm with you. Now, I know there's teams of people out there who want things. There's some people who want a Rey and Finn romance. There's some people who want Finn to come fully fledged into the Jedi role. There's more people who want Finn to grapple with his Stormtrooper First Order past. And I really, look, I mean, my preference is that Finn comes as a Jedi. I want him to come as a Jedi, be Rey's equal in these stories, to have been her first student, and then, now he's a master, or now he's a knight, or whatever we feel comfortable doing here, but that he is Rey's equal in the Jedi Order. But the main thing I want is for John Boyega to come back and for John Boyega to love what he's doing. Finn is his character, and I want him to have a huge voice on what Finn's doing, where he is, where he needs to be. Like, if John Boyega's not satisfied with the direction, then they need to take a look and see what's going on. See why he's not satisfied, work in what he thinks needs to be done for this character. Because the guy cares about this character. He knows this character intimately, and I want to see him get what he deserves. What it was billed as at the beginning of The Force Awakens, that he's this main character, stormtrooper turned Jedi that just didn't come to fruition, was rewritten in The Last Jedi, did not have time to be realized in The Rise of Skywalker. And so I would really like to see Finn return in a role, or I would like to see John Boyega return as Finn in a role where he really, really wants to be there.
Now that's a great sentiment. I hope that comes to pass.
Yeah, I absolutely do too. So Colin, we got more casting news. This is the last piece of casting news we're going to talk about. It's a little small blurb. We pretty much already knew this was the case, but it is confirmed. Forrest Whitaker, in a recent interview, said that he will be returning for Andor Season 2, so we're getting some more Saw Gerrera scenes in Andor Season 2.
Yeah, Saw Gerrera is such an interesting character throughout all of Star Wars. I love that character appears in so much. I love Forrest Whitaker's portrayal. We first saw him in Rogue One, right?
Yes.
As Saw portrayed him.
Yes.
Or as Forrest Whitaker portrayed him, sorry. And I don't think there's any other way to put this lightly, but Saw Gerrera is, from the Empire's perspective, they're all terrorists, but, he's just straight up. He's no bones about it.
He's by anyone's definition a terrorist.
But like Leia Organa is not a terrorist, right? She is a military focused and
she's a freedom fighter.
Yeah, freedom fighter. But Saw Gerrera is a terrorist, and there's a lot to be said about that. But I harken back to a Star Trek episode. I'm sorry, but gets right down to it. Terrorism can be. It's really bad. I condemn it totally. I think there's other ways to do things, but especially in a broad universe as the Star Wars galaxy, and you got terrorists are going to exist, and the Saw Gerrera character is very interesting portrayal of what a terrorist can do, what their motivations are, and seeing Forrest Whitaker accomplish this is really neat.
Yeah,
because he has such great acting chops. It's really interesting to see.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. He's really, really cool to watch. Super interesting character. Forrest Whitaker brings a new dimension to Saw. And what I'd like to see out of this is, we seesaw so much throughout throughout this time period, throughout the dark times, slip into madness. His character in each different portrayal, whether it's in Rebels, Andor, The Clone Wars, The Bad Batch, Rogue One, wherever, Fallen Order, wherever he pops up, his character's just a little bit crazier, depending on what time period, than he was the last time. And I would really like to see, since Andor is taking their arcs in chunks, first arc will be 4 BBY, second arc will be 3 BBY, et cetera, et cetera. I'd like to see him maybe show up in the 4th year and the 2nd year and see a marked difference in his sanity over that 2-year period. Just being able to trace that line through the same show of Saw, slipping, becoming more paranoid, just falling further into delusion. Because we already saw it in the first season of Andor. But I'd really like to see that line traced and emphasized even more. And with the way that Andor is more dark and gritty and realistic, they could really get into it on his paranoia and really get into some kind of, scarier, more real, like what his paranoia is capable of. And I think that'd be a really interesting direction.
That descent is so crazy. And then what I want to see is, like, how does he interact with Luthen? Those are Luthen's a new character in Andor that was introduced there, and that force dynamic between the two is going to be so fun to explore.
I know. I really want to see it deepened, because their conversations that we got in the first season, they knew each other well, and they were treating each other as equals. And where does Luthen fit between Mon Mothma and Saw Gerrera? Where does Luthen straddle the line between terrorist and freedom fighter? It's going to be really cool. I'm so excited for Andor. If you ask me what my favorite 2024 series, what my most anticipated one, on any given day, it could be The Acolyte or Andor or whatever, but I do think it's Andor right now. I'm just so pumped. Every leak for Andor, I'm all over. I want to know everything about this show.
Right.
All right, Colin, so our very last news story, it is going to be fun. It is going to be fun. Our very last news story is a cool little treat for George Lucas. George Lucas's first feature film, American Graffiti, is coming to Netflix on May 1st. And if you haven't seen, this is more just a PSA. This is really just a plug. If you haven't seen American Graffiti, this is your chance. Take it now, because George Lucas is just such a legendary director, obviously, and such a legendary creator that you've got to check out American Graffiti.
Have you ever seen it? I haven't.
You haven't seen it? No, I've seen it once. I rented the DVD when I was a kid, back when that was an actual thing that people did. And so it's been years since I've seen it. But my dad really liked the movie, so he was like, "Oh yeah, we need to rent this and watch it." And it's a masterpiece. I mean, it's nothing like Star Wars. I mean, the directorial style, you'll see hints and whispers, but it's a realistic story. George has both his feet planted firmly on planet Earth, and it's just about real people and real people problems. And so it's neat to see George Lucas playing in an arena like that.
Yeah, it looks fun. The poster looks really cool.
Yeah, no, it's worth checking out. So like I said, it'll be out on May 1st. So anybody out there listening to this after May 1st, log on to Netflix. And this is the U.S. Netflix, by the way. Obviously, I figured that people would know that from We're American, if you couldn't tell. So it's on the American Netflix. I do not know the status of other Netflixes, but I hope it's on yours. If you're listening to this in Bahrain, then I hope that it is on your Bahrain Netflix. That wraps up our HoloNet news segment, Colin. And so we're going to jump into the Star Wars moment of the week, because I am so excited about mine. So here we go. Star Wars moment of the week.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Colin, I did not think I was going to be this excited about this Star Wars moment of the week as I am. I was really excited for this, but it has exceeded my expectations 1,000-fold. Star Wars and DK Publishing released yesterday the Star Wars Timelines book on April 25th. It is a massive reference book that details every event in Star Wars from the very first event to take place in 25,025 BBY all the way to The Rise of Skywalker. and it
my
details everything: books, comics, audio dramas, TV shows, movies. I mean, it is all the ins and outs, all the short stories, everything are little blurbs on these timelines. The book itself,
Who wrote that book?
It was a team effort. So it was written by a few different authors. And I'm reaching for it because I don't want to get anybody's name wrong. But this is, I mean, when you see the book, you can really understand that this was not the undertaking by one person. It was written by Kristen Baver, Jason Fry, who is an old reference book veteran. Jason Fry was involved in a lot of Star Wars reference books. Cole Horton, Amy Rechaw, and Clayton Sandell. So 5 authors spanning every era in Star Wars. And man, the book is so pretty. The inside looks great. It's got awesome colors. It's really colorful.
Yeah, it looks amazing.
Like, the whole thing is really, it's out of this world, man. It knocked my expectations out of the park. And I'll say that it gave me new speculation for the Dawn of the Jedi movie. And I'm making my first always in motion prediction about a movie that we don't even have its release date, that there's probably not even a script out there. My prediction for this movie is that Hui Yang, the droid voiced by David Tennant, who will show up in Ahsoka, that showed up in the Clone Wars and helped the Padawans build their lightsabers, will be in the Dawn of the Jedi movie.
Oh, that's something. That'd be cool.
Because this book states and confirms that Professor Hu Yang powered up in 25,020 BBY, and the birth of the Jedi was in 25,025 BBY. And there's a quote from Hu Yang that says he remembers every lightsaber ever created. And so maybe that really is the case. Maybe that was not some C-3PO style droid exaggeration. And so I don't know. This book is, I haven't even gotten through it. I just finished reading the High Republic section. I have just begun the Fall of the Jedi section in 100 BBY. It's not even, I mean, that's not even a seventh of the way through this book. So I really, really am excited to crack this thing open and really get to reading. I'll say about the book, it's pretty much required for what we do here. Like it's for this book. I don't even know how people do what we do without this book now, because if you're any kind of Star Wars content creator, just having this definitive timeline in your arsenal is going to be extremely important moving forward. I guarantee it.
Yeah. I can't wait to crack it open myself. I'm going to have to go buy one. Add to cart.
Yep. All right, Colin, what's your Star Wars moment of the week?
Nothing that compares to that, I guess. No, but so my whole family is into Legos. My son, he just got, with his own money that he earned, he's 6, by the way. He had a Mario set, and he got a Luigi set to go with it, because Mario needs to hang out with Luigi, and with somebody his age and his size, he cares a lot about that Mario stuff. But my kids have Hearts of Gold. They bought me, nowadays it's called Boba Fett ship. It's a mini, like a mini version of it. I forget what they're called. They're like the little collection.
Yeah, Slave One
set. Well, it doesn't say that on the box. I was kind of disappointed. Yeah, it's Slave One, but mini figures, mini racers or something is what these things are called. There's a bunch. They come out with 2 or 3 different or 4 different ones a year. And so like I've got ones that when they first came out, they're worth like $80 or something on eBay. You know how Legos are. But I still have in the box the what is it? The cantina on Tatooine, Mos Eisley Cantina, with all the characters in it. I got for Christmas and sell and put together. So it's always fun. My kids buy these Legos for me. And they're like, Daddy, why don't you put these together? I'm like, because they're collector's items and they're worth money. I'm that nerd guy who collects all these. I have to almost buy 2 of them sometimes. One to put together and one to collect.
Right.
It's a stereotype that's real, and I'm living proof. But it frustrates my kids to no end. It's so fun to see them, help them build Legos. They're not wholly into Star Wars yet, but it's going to be a good day when they want Star Wars Legos, but also a sad day because they're going to open them and put them together and play with them.
Right. That's
yeah.
awesome. No, that is great. I'm happy that you were able to get some more Legos. I haven't gotten Legos in a while, and I need to. I've been itching every time I walk by the aisle in Walmart or Target.
Well, they know how to get you. They come out with the sets every month. So,
Yep.
or not every month, every quarter at least or something. And like one of them I'm looking forward to is the TIE Interceptor pursuing the Comric fighter.
Yep.
So
Yep. That's going to be a good
the
set.
Mandalorian fighter. It's going to be a really good set. I'm going to actually put that one together.
Good.
Because I like to play with them.
Might you, perhaps, Colin, be putting these together on our stream? We are going to be streaming Survivor. Colin is going to be streaming painting things for Star Wars Legion. And hopefully Colin is going to be streaming Legos. Colin, where can they find you streaming?
Yeah, so gosh, if it's 9 p.m., I guess here in the next couple of days at twitch.tv/station media. And or do you want to stream first? We haven't really talked about this yet.
Right,
you're going to be able to watch one of us
schedule.
And over the next several days playing this, and then come keep me entertained and ask all kinds of questions in there. And that's for you, Carter, or anybody. Or I'll come help you ask questions. It's going to be fun.
We are going to have a great time streaming. I can't wait. It's really my first time streaming for real. I'll be streaming from my Xbox, so I can only stream to Twitch. And I know that really I think the answer is just when one of us is streaming, the other one's streaming to YouTube, vice versa if we're streaming at the same time. We're going to be streaming on Twitch, though, for sure. Twitch.tv/station media. We're super excited, guys. I'm pumped. This game is going to be so fun. You are going to want to tune in to see us. Also, join our Discord because we're going to keep you guys updated on the streams. We're going to make sure that you know when we're streaming, and we're going to be talking about the game, especially in the spoiler chat. It is going to be blowing up. Spoilers are already out there. I mean, people have posted full gameplay reviews already for some people who got advanced copies. Exactly. And so it's a big part of the Star Wars community to all get to experience this together at the same time. We're happy that we're experiencing it with the fans at the same time, and we are super excited to put out there our review as soon as we're able to.
Yeah, and then we got a lot of other stuff going on. Every day there's more and more good discussion in Discord. Warhammer stuff is spinning up. What else we got? The biggest thing that you can do to help us out any day of the week is leave a review for the podcast and get your friend to leave us a review for the podcast. It advances what we're doing immensely up there. It gets more people, gets more prompting for people to listen to us when they search out Star Wars podcasts.
Yeah.
So it helps us out a bunch. And if you want to help us out, you want to take an extra step, take a look at those Patreon tiers. And we got lots of merch coming out, lots of other things, of which, gosh, the future is really bright. What else do we have to close this thing out, Carter?
Yeah, Colin, you mentioned the high points, reviews. We really appreciate them. Patreon tiers. We got all kinds of creative stuff over there. We've got a tier for everybody. Please go check it out, guys. We are starting our live play RPG soon. We are going to have that released early May. And so we want to make sure that you guys are ready for that, listening for that. It'll release on our regular podcatchers on this for the first episode. And then subsequent episodes will be available video and audio on our Patreon at the $2 tier. So be sure to check that out, guys. Go take a look at our Patreon, patreon.com/Star Wars Station. Like Colin said, leave a review, talk to your friends, and follow us on social media. We've got an Instagram page, starwars.station. It's always posting memes, 3 memes a day, every day, maybe more, maybe not, actually never less, pretty much never less, always at least 3. Check out our Twitter, SW_station. It's just my stream of Star Wars consciousness. So if you want to know what I'm thinking about at any given moment about Star Wars, that's where you're going to find it. You can follow us, like we said, on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. We've got a Facebook. Go like it. Go follow it. And we've got a super awesome Facebook group. It is growing quickly. We continue to engage with people there. That's Star Wars Station Cantina. And we got a Discord link in the bio of this podcast. So we have tons of ways for you guys, our community, to engage with us, and that is the highlight of doing this, is engaging with the community.
Yeah, and we love talking to as many people as we can. Check out our special that we just published. We engage with a lot of fans there, talking about so many different subjects within the Mandalorian realm, and whatever else you want to talk about, let's talk about it.
Yes, and Colin, I would be negligent if I didn't also mention that we are starting a brand new podcast series available on Patreon called Arc Troopers. Go check it out, guys. We really want you to take a look at this series. We're going to be talking about our favorite arcs from Star Wars TV. It can be Andor, Clone Wars, Rebels, anything. And so we're going to be talking about those arcs with ourselves, with our friends, with other Star Wars content creators, with other just different content creators. And so we would really like for you guys to be a part of that. So go check the Patreon out for that. We're going to have the first episode out for that really soon. So go check it out, patreon.com/Star Wars Station. We appreciate you guys listening. We appreciate all of the support that you give us. We have a great time doing this. We're going to have a great time playing Survivor in 2 days. We're going to be back next week with another episode. We can't wait for it. And until then, keep it wizard.